Hello guys, 1107 is near. Next Wednesday we are getting the new patch. So they have some additional class tuning for us. Some even for Death Knight. So let's see what we got here. For Unholy, we have Apocalypse ghoul damage increased by 30%. That's not a bad buff, to be honest. Rotten Touch now increases the damage of your Scourge Strike against the target by 60%, was 50%. So a 10% buff. But how I know this effect is already reduced in PvP. It was 30%. So this is not gonna make a huge difference for PvP. Now the death coil damage increased by 8%. You know, last time they freaking nerfed it pretty hard, so now they're giving a tiny bit of damage back, so just a little buff back to death coil. Now Scourge Strike, Clawing Shadow and Vampiric Strike damage increased by 10%. I like that they are giving this 10% buff even to Vampiric Strike, but honestly, I think if they would want to make Sand Lane for Unholy more viable, they should definitely buff the proc chance, just as they did for Blood, so that Vampiric Strike procs more, and they should consider to buff Frenzied Bloodthirst, what made actually Blood so broken and what they should have actually nerfed and not Death Strike, but okay. Or an even better idea would be that the Frenzied Bloodthirst effect actually applies to Clawing Shadows, Vampiric Strike and Scourge Strike. And by that you could make Unholy DK that's not focused on pets, but actually dealing damage on button press. Nobody is playing Sand Lane Unholy Death Knight. It's absolutely useless, specifically in PvP. So if they want to make it more viable, give it some buffs, Blizzard, because this is nothing. They could absolutely make Sand Lane Unholy DK like a bruiser, where you actually press an ability, you're dealing damage to make it close, like a fighter. Unholy DK, you know? Not just rely on pets and diseases, mostly. Sand Lane is so far from Apocalypse away, it's crazy how bad it is. Now Demon Hunters, your Fellblade damage is increased by 10%. The Hunt initial damage increased by 10%. Okay, nice. And they're getting Chaos Strike Annihilation damage increased by 10%. Demons by Demon Blades damage increased by 10%. Okay, we got here some nice buffs for Demon Hunter to make them more viable. Devastation, all damage increased by 4%, does not apply in PvP combat. Fire damage though is increased by 20%. This applies for PvP as well. Now Hunter's Marksmanship, trick shots damage percentage increased to 75%, was 65%. Razor Fragments, AoE damage percentage increased to 35%, was 25%. And Dark Ranger, Black Arrow damage increased by 15%. Okay, they are giving Black Arrow some damage back. They are making it a bit stronger to have stronger finishers. Dark Ranger Shadow Surge damage increased by 25%, and Dark Ranger Bleak Powder damage increased by 25%. Okay, Marksmanship is getting some buffs. Honestly, I don't really mind. I think Beast Mastery is right now the strongest. Tell me if I'm wrong, but in Arena I mostly see Beastmasters, maybe Survival. Marksmanship, I don't know when I saw them the last time. Holy Paladins, Veneration now transfers 225% of damage done into healing, was 200%, so a 25% buff. Saved by the Light Absorb amount increased by 15%, does not affect PvP combat. Okay, Consecrate damage increased by 30%. I don't think that means anything. Paladins. Consecrate doesn't do much. Lightsmith Temperate in battle no longer activates while the paladin is within crowd control. Temperate in battle no longer activates if its target is in Cyclone, Detainment, Imprison, or Diamond Ice Freezing Trap. Okay, this is gonna affect Holy Paladins in PvP for sure. Priest Holy, they are getting Flesh Healing increased by 15% and Holy Fire damage increased by 15%. So basically they're gonna have a stronger instacast Holy Fires. Not bad. Holy Priest is receiving some positive love. Shaman Restoration, Totemic Surging Totem mana cost reduced by 25%. Okay. Warlock Affliction. Hound damage increased by 75%. Not applied to PvP combat, thank god. Focused Malignancy now causes Malefic Rupture to deal 25% decreased damage to targets suffering from unstable affliction was 15%. Not applied to PvP combat, thank god. But Oblivion damage increased by 25%. We want to make people maybe use Oblivion more. Xavius's Gambit now increases the damage of unstable affliction by 20% was 15%. Now this is gonna apply to PvP as well. It's 5% buff. And Perpetual Unstability. Damage increased by 25%. Okay. Siphon Life now increases corruption damage by 30%, was 20%. Now the PvP changes. Death Knight. Both for Blood and Frost, Deathbringer is getting tiny buffs. Basically, last time they nerfed Reaper's Mark damage, now they increase it by 20%, so okay. And Deathbringer Wave of Souls damage increased by 20% in PvP combat for both Frost and Blood. Now honestly, Deathbringer as Blood, I still think it's terrible. I think Sandlane was better than Deathbringer. If they really want to make them more viable in PvP, both Deathbringer and Sandlane, they should just revert the change to Deathstrike and instead nerf the talent Frenzied Bloodthirst, as I mentioned before. They buffed it and it was crazy strong for PvP because of it, and they basically just baseline nerfed our Deathstrike main ability by 35% in PvP rather than nerfing the talent, which basically just had a huge impact on Deathstrike. So they absolutely demolished Blood. Anyway, Druid, Balance, Elune's Chosen Lunar Calling is now 80% effective in PvP combat, was 62%. Restoration, all healing increased by 5% in PvP combat. Evoker Augmentation, Deep Breath damage reduced by 15%, and Molten on Embers increases damage taken from black spells by up to 20%, was 40 in PvP combat, so a 20% nerf. I think this was regarding the one shot that they could do, so they are targeting that. Mage, Sunfury, Burden of Power now increases the damage of your next Pyroblast or Arcane Blast by 40% in PvP combat, was 20%, so 20% buff to Sunfury, Burden of Power. Okay, Monk, Mistweaver, Celestial Conduit Healing increased by 50% in PvP combat. Now, I didn't really see healers use this. Mostly I saw Fistweavers, like Windwalkers, but okay. It's crazy powerful though for Windwalkers. Crazy damage, and if you're alone, you're getting destroyed with it. Specifically if he calls his clones. Windwalker, Fist of Fury damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. Oh my god. But at least they nerf Blackout Kick damage by 15% in PvP combat, and Karma is getting nerfed apparently as well in PvP. Until now it was absorbing 80% of their maximum health, now it's only 50%. And Shadowpan Flurry Strike, shadow damage from Wisdom of the Wall increased by 30% in PvP combat. If this affects Fists of Fury, I don't know what this exactly is, because I'm not really playing monks. Discipline, Voidweaver, Inner Quietus, I don't know if I read it right. Increases power word shield. Absorption by 40% in PvP combat was 20%. That's a nice change, because this way they want to make this, people to play more the Voidweaver build where you actually deal damage, heal, shield, It's more like DPS oriented than the other build. Shaman Elemental, Stormbringer, Tempest damage increased by 15% in PvP combat. Oh god. Elementals are already one-shotting people and they're giving them more damage. Let's make even Tempest stronger. Restoration, Riptide healing increased by 15% in PvP combat. And Healing Surge healing increased by 20% in PvP combat. That's pretty huge for Restoration in PvP, I would say. Nice buffs. But oh my freaking god, Warlocks Destruction. Chaos Ball damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. Are you freaking crazy? Really? They're dealing already so huge damage with Chaos Balls? Like this is gonna... Oh my god. And emulate damage over time increased by 20% in PvP combat. Okay, they nerf Hellcaller with a damage over time reduced by 25% in PvP combat. Basically, they want you to use the other build. To not go Hellcaller Wither build, but this other one. The other hero talent. You know, oh my god. I think this is gonna be maybe a bit too broken. You will definitely see locks climbing like crazy from Wednesday. Trust me. I have a Warlock as well. Maybe I'm actually gonna play it. It's gonna be fun to freaking destroy people. My god. Warriors Arms is getting some love for PvP. Rend damage increased by 15% in PvP combat and overpower damage increased by 20% in PvP combat. Fury. Mountain Tane. Strength of the mountain now increases the damage of Rampage and Bloodthirst by 45% in PvP combat was 30%. Oh my god, they're buffing even Fury a bit. Well, honestly, I mean, Fury, I just hate it for one particular reason. That auto-attacking crazy damage, you know, that's how Fury for me feels, like, forever, specifically, and they are healing more than a freaking Death Knight. Like, as a Death Knight to kill a Fury Warrior, it's crazy hard if you're literally in melee range and just hitting each other, like, impossible. Only blood could beat them, maybe, but that's not gonna beat them now neither. So these will appear in the final patch notes. Yeah, good. And that's it, guys. So yeah, nothing crazy for that night, but we see some crazy stuff for Warlocks. Resto Shaman is pretty nice, I would say, the buffs. So yeah, we'll see how it's gonna turn out once these patch notes go live, but I'm definitely sure Warlocks, Chaos Bolt, that's gonna hurt. See you guys in the next video, and yeah, have a nice weekend.
Beneath the ice and snow, a legend awakens. I am Arthas, the Lich King ruler of the damned master of Frostmourne.